Mr. Secretary, thank you so much for sitting down with us. I wanted to start off, you've been on the Hill quite a bit recently talking about how we've moved from being in the most, getting ready for the most transformational period in VA in decades to being in the middle of it. But a lot of these transformations, electronic health records, the Mission Act, these things are things that are coming down the pike. We'll see in a little bit. So at what point do you feel like veterans are going to see the change and really feel the changes that are happening?
Well, the first change will come in June, Leo, and that is when we make available the access standards, the new standards that will give our veterans the option of choosing care in the private sector when VA cannot provide that. That is slated to go online on June 6th. And what that does, and particularly for our rural veterans and for those who want to be closer to their families, it gives them the option of choosing care if we cannot provide it. I'm going to give you a negative answer as the final part of the explanation. It is not what it has been purported to be, and that is what I would call libertarian choice. You don't give a veteran a card and say, thank you very much. The private sector is wide open to you. What it does do is it says that in the legislation, the veteran is at the center of his health care, not the institution. And if there's something we cannot provide, he has the option of going in the private sector or waiting for us to provide it. That is a sea change in terms of the way we operate. The other side of this, though, is that veterans continue to vote with their feet. We now have a veteran satisfaction rate, as I said in testimony, that's approaching 90%. Our customer satisfaction rates are at an all-time high. I look at that as the gauge as to how well we are doing. I also believe, and I'm not one to use a lot of anecdotes, but I can say as someone who has spent an entire life in and amongst the military, that our veterans, no matter what age they are, will go primarily to some place where people speak the language and understand the culture. That means the American veteran is happy with the care that he or she receives. And as you know, last year we were the recipient of several studies, including the Annals of Internal Medicine, that said VA care is as good or better as any in any section of the country.
But if I'm a veteran this summer who comes to you and says, look, I've got a community care option here, but can you tell me what's best for me? Where am I going to get the best care? What do you tell them?
Well, that'll come also as a result of the Mission Act. I mean, the Mission Act says up front that it's the veteran's health interest that is first and foremost. So that veteran will have a care team at VA they will speak with him, they will talk about the options for him. As I said, 9 times out of 10, he's going to probably stay with the people that he knows and in the community he knows. Coming from a military family of generations past, my service being modest compared to my ancestors. The military is a unique culture. The pull of the culture on people to be where they share experiences with others is very different from any other segment of the country. And as I said, even as VA has had hiccups, and we've overcome those hiccups, we've actually seen the number of veterans asking us to go into the private sector drop. The other thing that we're changing is that we are changing the way we provide services to also accommodate the needs and the mores of the new population of veterans.
And that's a great example of one where, that's a resource that I know VA's put a lot of work into in recent years. Is that going to be promoted in the same way that the Community Care Act is promoted?
Absolutely, and I can't remember the exact numbers, but the amount of money that we are spending on telehealth has gone up in an exponential rate in the last few years. We're on the cutting edge of using it for mental health issues. It also reaches into rural areas, and more importantly, we're allowed to do with telehealth what the rest of the country can't. Let's say you're in Montana and you need to speak to a dermatologist. Well, the dermatologist at the Denver VA, who may be the world recognized expert, can get on the screen with you in Montana, and he can practice medicine, and he can tell you what is wrong, and he can prescribe for you the remedies for your condition. That's cutting edge. And again, with the change in the way our veterans react, we're now promoting urgent care. We're getting people out of the emergency rooms and providing them a service that they see all of their fellow citizens having. And that's one thing that I don't know that I've emphasized enough. Again, the Mission Act told us what to do. And I've heard some people say that the changes in access standards and availability standards were arbitrary and capricious. Well, if they have that charge, they need to go to the members of Congress who wrote the Mission Act, because the Mission Act gave me very clear instructions on how I come up with access standards. It said I had to look to TRICARE, Medicare, and the standards in the major private health organizations across the country. And what we are giving veterans in June is what they've probably been used to on active duty, most of them, who encountered TRICARE or what was available when I was little, CHAMPUS.
So June 6th is the deadline here. Is VA going to be ready? There's been a lot of concerns about the IT. We saw what happened last fall with the GI Bill and the payments. You were just speaking about some of the needs and improvements. How, you know, as we see this transition in, veterans are rightfully skeptical that VA will be ready for it.
So I am expecting the decision support tool to be ready on June 6th. That's really the crux of this. A decision support tool is something that our medical professionals at VA will use when Leo Shane, veteran, comes to us, tells us what is ailing him, and we may not have that service. The doctor punches up on the decision support tool the option in the private sector for that service. If the veteran, if Leo Shane wants to partake of that, then he has access to that. Now let's say that, again, statement against interest, let's say that our doctors aren't ready to handle that. I think they will be. But we also have in place, as any good military organization will have, redundancies, that they will have another system supporting that can get our veterans what they need. But let me again go back to what it isn't. It is not a Medicare card. It is not libertarian free market medicine. Congress didn't tell us to do that. The Congress told us to give choice only in very specific areas. So it is different. Again, veterans' health is at the center, but it is not what many have claimed to be, and that is the privatization of this organization. And as I've said before, how can anyone say that you're on the cusp of privatization when you just presented to the United States Congress a $220 billion budget?
Let me come back to that again. What, you know, when June 6th rolls around, should they feel like anything is different?
Yeah, that will be the first part. The second part that will kick in later in the year will be, hopefully, the expansion of our caregiver support program. Medicine is changing and VA is changing with it. The trends in medicine are to keep people out of hospitals and keep them at home for longer periods. What the Mission Act does is it says to my father's generation, the Vietnam generation, for the first time, we are providing family caregivers for the Vietnam era. I'll give you the personal anecdote there. I approved the electronic health record when I was the acting secretary, based on the experiences that I had in my own family. Father, very decorated combat soldier, terribly wounded in the invasion of Cambodia, came out of service in the Army with terrible problems, two new knees, two new hips, had lead in his body. He had a lifetime of chronic pain, but what made his life more difficult was that there was only one record of his medical care, and that was 800 pages. The only copy. And for the next almost 35 years of his life, that's the only thing that he could carry around, and that's why I made the decision on the electronic health record, so we never encounter that again.